She refused him.
Yes.
Harriet Smith refused Robert Martin.
Yes.
And she is a greater simpleton than I had imagined. But I hope you're wrong.
Nothing could be clearer. I saw her answer.
You saw her answer. Emma? You wrote her answer, didn't you?
If I did, I should not feel I had done wrong. He is not Harriet's equal.
I agree, he is not her equal.
Good.
He is her superior in sense and situation. What are Harriet Smith's claims to any connections higher than Robert Martin? She is the natural daughter of nobody knows who. She is pretty and good-tempered, and that is all. The advantage of the match was entirely on her side.
What? Think if I'm a good match for my intimate friend? The sphere in which she moves is much above his. It would be a degradation for her to marry a man whom I can never admit as my own acquaintance.
A degradation for illegitimacy and ignorance to be married to a respectable, intelligent farmer?
She is a gentleman's daughter. That she associates with gentlemen's daughters, no one will deny. She is superior to Robert Martin.
Upon my word, Emma, better to be without sense than misapplied as you do. Let her marry Robert Martin and she'll be safe, respectable, and happy forever.
We see so differently on the subject, we can make no use canvassing it. We shall only make each other more angry. Ah, I see the tea is ready. Let's stop and have some.
Your views for Harriet are best known to yourself. As you make no secret of your matchmaking, as a friend I shall hint to you that, if Mr. Elton is the man, then your labour is in vain. As vicar, he is very unlikely to make an imprudent match. I tell you, he may talk sentimental, but he will act rationally.
If I had set my heart on Mr. Elton's marrying Harriet, it would be very kind of you to open my eyes. But at present, I only want to keep...
No more.
I do so wonder, Miss Woodhouse, that you should never be married. So charming as you are.
I have none of the usual inducements of women to marry. Fortune I do not want, employment I do not want, and consequence I do not want. I believe few married women are half as much of mistress of their house as I am at Hartfield.
But to be an old maid, like Miss Bates.
Isn't it lovely to have visitors, Mother? Treat, Mother, treat!
That is as formidable image as you could present, Harriet. And if I thought I was going to be like Miss Bates, so silly, so smiling, so satisfied, so unfastidious, and so apt to telling everything relative about oneself to everybody, I would marry tomorrow. But I am sure there can be never any likeness, except their now being unmarried.
But still, to be an old maid at last, and that's so dreadful.
Never mind, Harriet, I shall not be a poor old maid, and it is poverty only which makes celibacy contemptible to a generous public. A single woman of good fortune is always respectable.
Miss Woodhouse, Miss Smith, what an unexpected surprise to be sure. For today is Tuesday, and her day for writing is Thursday. And so we did not expect a letter today at all. But we did not receive a letter from her. We received her instead. Ah, what an exciting surprise. And you are here, and she is here, and we are spoilt, so spoilt. I do not know what we shall do.
Do you know Miss Bates' niece?
One is sick of the very name of Jane Fairfax. Every letter from her is read 40 times over. If she does but send a pattern of a scarf to her aunt, or a pair of socks to her grandmother, you hear of nothing else for a month. I wish Jane Fairfax very well, but she tires me to death. Miss Fairfax.
Miss Woodhouse.
We're so glad to have you with us. How did you ever manage to get away?
Well, the Campbells have gone to Ireland.
Jane has been longing to go to Ireland ever since Mr. Dixon's account of things. Mr. Dixon is the most charming, amiable young man. I've been so fond of him ever since the service he rendered Jane at Weymouth. Well, when they were out on the water, and she, by the sudden whirling around of something among the sails, was nearly dashed into the sea, and was all but gone. Gone, Mother! Had he not had the presence of mind to catch hold of her?
How terrifying for you, Miss Fairfax.
Jane, tell Miss Woodhouse who you saw at Weymouth. Mr. Frank Churchill. That's who she saw. Frank Churchill.
Frank Churchill. Was he handsome?
I believe he was reckoned to be a very fine man.
Was he agreeable?
He was generally thought so.
Was he a sensible man?
It was difficult to decide on such points. I believe everybody found his manners pleasing.
Indeed, a most charming, amiable young man. You and I have not met him, Miss Woodhouse. No wonder we are so curious to see him.
Miss Fairfax, you must come to the Christmas party at the Westons tonight.
Oh, Mrs. Woodhouse, that is most obliging of you.
But you promised Mrs. Cole you'd
Oh,
come
yes.
to the...
Oh, yes, to be sure. I promised just 5 minutes ago to Mrs. Cole. You know how Mrs. Cole was so very fond of Jane, just like yourself. Well, she was here just now on account of seeing Jane. Miss Bates, said she, would you care to come to our Christmas party? Oh, said I, but Jane is very likely to catch cold. But she assured us that she would not, and so I told Mrs. Cole we would be quite delighted. And
Harriet!
You're coming to see
Harriet, we must
forget of what I'd said to Mrs. Cole. Isn't it lovely to have visitors, Mother? Treat, Mother. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
And then poor Miss Taylor called in yesterday, and she brought some very good news, that finally all the cake was eaten up. Wedding cake, you know, is far too rich. Yes, Mr. Perry is not a great fan of it. It upsets the stomach, you know.
Mrs. Cole said she saw the Perry children last week with a piece each.
No, I cannot believe that. Mr. Perry would never allow that. It upsets the stomach, you know.
Oh, Mr. Elton!
Oh, Miss Woodhouse, Miss Smith.
Harriet is collecting riddles for her book. We thought you would come up with something clever.
Oh, no, I've never written anything in my life. I'm afraid not even Miss Smith or Miss Woodhouse could inspire me.
I can remember nothing. Not even that particular riddle which you have heard me mention. Kitty, a fair but frozen maid, kindled a flame I yet deplore. The hoodwinked boy I called to aid, though that is all I can remember of it. But it is very clever all the way through.
Yes, Papa, it is written on our second page.
Aye, very true. I wish I could recollect more of it. Kitty, a fair but frozen maid, kindled a flame I yet deplore.
I'm so looking forward to the Christmas party tonight.
Yes, dear.
And Mr. Elton wants to be there too.
Yes, Harriet, but I have something here from Mr. Elton that cannot fail to lift the spirits. He claims it is a riddle for your book, but I know it is much more.
Is it a riddle about sharks?
Oh, Harriet, why would he write a riddle about sharks?
I'm confused.
Dear Miss... I think we can safely put in Smith. My first displays the wealth and pomp of kings, lords of the earth, their luxury and ease. That's court, dear. A king displays his pomp in court. Another view of man my second brings. Behold him there, the monarch of the seas.
Is it Neptune? A mermaid? A trident? Oh, Miss Woodhouse, shall we ever know?
That ship, dear, as plain as can be. Now for the queen, but united, what reverse we have. The two terms should be united. Courtship, Harriet, courtship.
Oh, Miss Woodhouse, this is beyond anything I deserve. Mr. Elton might marry anybody.
Yes, dear, and only think how depressed Mr. Elton will be when he hears of your poor state.
Such a sad loss to our party. She'll be missed at every moment. However, I feel, and I hope you will concur, the small parties are often the best. In fact, I'd much rather fall short by two than exceed by two. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Woodhouse?
Oh yes, quite, Mr. Elton.
Snow's a little charming.
Tell me, Mr. West, how many acres do you say about?
Give it a rest, brother, because we can go talking about this all night. What do you think about this fudge?
You said it was 30,000. Mr. Alvin, you're the...
Sure, this fudge came from heaven itself. I couldn't agree more.
Yes, well...
Emma dear, we have had a letter from Frank.
What is this news? Is he to pay a visit?
Now, Mr. Elton, I was married before. My wife was from a great Yorkshire family. They disapproved of the marriage, and all communications between us ceased. A year after my son Frank was born, my wife became terminally ill. This lingering illness became the reconciliation between us, and they were quite taken with young Frank. As the Churchills had no children of their own, they offered to take full charge of little Frank soon after her decease. I see him once a year in London, but he has never been to visit my home.
It is generally thought that our wedding would be the opportunity for Frank to pay a visit. But his aunt,
Mrs. Churchill. Do you know the Churchills at all, Mr. Elton?
No, I have not had the pleasure of...
She is an odd woman. She has no more heart than stone.
Yeah.
And so you do not consider this visit from your son by any means certain?
I cannot bear to imagine any reluctancy on Frank's side.
He has been wanting to come to us ever since September. Every letter has been full of it.
But it depends entirely upon his aunt's spirits and pleasures. In short, upon her temper.
But I have no doubt of seeing him about the start of January.
In short, I felt no dependence on his coming.
There is something in the very name of Frank Churchill that has always interested me. As you know, I've declared never to marry. But if I did, I think Mr. Churchill would be exactly the sort of person who would suit me.
I am not intruding. But I cannot stop thinking of Miss Smith's condition. I find the whole thing extremely alarming.
She'll be happy to know of your concern for her.
How could I not be? There's nothing worse than a bad sore throat. Its effects are exceedingly bleak. And that is why I must ask you, in the presence of your friend, to stop visiting her.
Really, Mr. Elton, you needn't worry about me.
How could I not be concerned? You're putting yourself at risk. I mean, is this fair? Have I not some right to complain?
The ground is quite covered in snow, sir, and still falling fast. A strong gusting wind, I dare say, will make it home alive.
Oh,
Another hour's snow will hardly make the road impassable.
oh, what shall we do?
We have 2 carriages, sir, and if one is blown over, the other one end.
Oh dear, whatever shall we do? Don't worry, Mr. Woodhouse, I'll take you home in my carriage. But what of Emma?
Mr. Woodhouse, I will personally ensure that Miss Woodhouse is taken home safely.
Certainly the weather.
Forgive me, I must avail myself of this God-given opportunity to tell you that I adore you passionately.
Mr. Elton, this is I, Miss Woodhouse. I shall be happy to deliver any message you have to Miss Smith.
Miss Smith? What message would I have to send to her? Miss Smith.
Mr. Elton, the wine has weakened you. For you to address me after
The wine, if it's had any effect, is to strengthen my resolve to tell you that I love you.
Mr. Elton, command yourself to say no more. For you to address me after your attentions to Miss Smith.
Miss Smith? I never cared whether Miss Smith was dead or alive, but only as your friend. Who can think of Miss Smith when Miss Woodhouse is near? Everything I have said or done was to make my adoration known unto you. Why do you think I went to London to get your picture framed? Allow me to interpret this interesting silence. It confesses that you have long understood me.
Mr. Elton, my astonishment is beyond anything I can express. Am I to understand that you never thought seriously of Miss Smith?
How can you be surprised? Did you not understand the riddle I sent you?
That was for Harriet.
I most obviously did not address it to Harriet and left it at your home. Harriet is a very good sort of girl. No doubt there are some men that might not reject. Everyone has their level. But I know totally despair of an equal alliance as to address myself to Miss Smith.
Sir.
No, I sought to recommend myself to you, after all the encouragement I received.
Encouragement? I've seen you only as the admirer of my friend.
I cannot believe it.
It is well the mistake ends where it does.
It was her mistake.
It is
Leave
mine
her out
as
of
well.
it. How do you feel about what I've said?
In no other light could you have been more than a common acquaintance. I have no thoughts of matrimony at present.
Good night.